Okay, I'm ready. My name is Turner Bilodeau, and today I will be teaching you guys how to play Bard in Final Fantasy XIV. So I just want to do a quick check-in with you guys. What is a game you find yourself spending a lot of time on? It can be a computer game or a console game, something on your phone, or even just like, I like to do a lot of jigsaw puzzles. Oh, I've heard of Ori. I keep meaning to try it out, but I haven't had time. Wordscapes, that's cool. Never heard of 500, but I'll check that out. I love Monopoly. That's really cool. It's cool that you play. Oh, Tetris. Been playing Tetris literally since I was 3. Um, well, one game that I really enjoy playing is called Final Fantasy XIV. It is an MMORPG, which in this context simply means I play as a character that is not directly myself, and I work together with other players from all around the world, and we work together to achieve various objectives. Players can take different responsibilities. There are some who are designed to hold the attention of enemies and intentionally take damage. There are some who are designed to heal, and then there are some who are just dedicated damage dealers. Bard is one of those dedicated damage dealers. Specifically, they are a physical ranged DPS job. The physical ranged aspect just means that they can attack their target from a very far distance. They do this by using a bow and arrow. They have a number of really solid strengths. They have full mobility, so they have very low risk gameplay. They also have a very fundamental, easy to learn rotation that basically never changes. And they have a lot of very useful utility skills. Their downsides, however, they have very low damage output compared to the other DPS jobs. And their general gameplay is a lot of reaction to randomness, so that can be a little much for new players. They primarily deal their damage over time rather than it being all front loaded, and they both have a rotation and priority flowchart which operate independently of each other. But before, oh, my bad. These two pictures are what we'll be going over in the lesson. They look like utter nonsense now, but in a few minutes they will make perfect sense. Before we get to that, I do need to highlight a few definitions and abbreviations. All of these are on your handout in greater detail. The first is cooldown, which is the time that a player has to wait before using an action again. We have two types of cooldowns. The first is the global cooldown, which is any skill that can only be used on a built-in 2.5 second timer. The next is an off-global cooldown, just off-global for short. That is an ability that can be used off the global cooldown, ideally between GCDs, and they have varying cooldowns. Next is weaving, which is the use of off-globals between the GCD. If you try to do this more than twice, it will do what's called clipping, which results in lowering your damage. DOT is an acronym that means damage over time, and that simply means that your damage is not dealt all at once. It will happen in set ticks. Song is a special spell that will interact with Bard's dots in a variety of ways. And proc is a random chance that something will occur. And a buff is any kind of beneficial effect. So we're going to start with the songs because those are arguably the most important aspect of Bard's gameplay. There are 3 songs which all have a 30-second duration and an 80-second cooldown. Mage's Ballad will give you a chance to use one of your off-globals again. Army's Paeon will give you a chance to go a little bit faster and lower that 2.5 second GCD. And Wanderer's Minuet also gives you a chance to use another damaging off-global that's a little bit stronger than Bloodletter. I'll also be abbreviating these as Ballad, Paeon, and Minuet, just for some shorthand. Now we're going to move on to their skills and abilities. We have Burst Shot, Caustic Bite, Storm Bite, and Iron Jaws. They each have their own unique purpose, but they also have a chance to proc Refulgent Arrow, which is much stronger than any of these. All 5 of these skills are GCDs. Next we have some abilities. We have Raging Strikes and Battle Voice, which are buffs that let people do more damage. You have Barrage, which will make your next skill hit 3 times, and it is guaranteed to give you Refulgent Arrow, unlike the chance that the first 4 GCDs have. And then Bloodletter, Imperial Arrow, Sidewinder, and Pitch Perfect are all damaging off globals. There's one last skill that's a little different from the others. It starts with a passive called Soul Voice, which as you get procs off your dots, it increases something called the Soul Voice gauge. When your gauge starts to increase, you will be able to use Apex Arrow, which is your most powerful GCD. It reaches its maximum strength when the Soul Voice gauge is filled, and when you use it, your Soul Voice gauge resets to 0. So we're going to circle back to this first image, which is called the opener. This is how you're going to start. You do a Raging Strikes 1 second before combat starts. Then you're going to apply your dots, and you're going to weave those 4 off globals you see between those GCDs. You next have 3 fillers, and you can get a Refulgent Arrow between any of them, and you use those instead of the burst shot if you have them. You're then going to get to a Barrage after your 3 fillers, which you will then do a Refulgent Arrow again, since that's guaranteed. Then you have Sidewinder, 1 last filler, Bloodletter, Iron Jaws, and Imperial Arrow. The Pitch Perfect is not shown due to its random nature, but you use it anywhere that you achieve 3 stacks, which is the most that you can have, but you have to make sure not to clip. And the timing of Bloodletter and Imperial Arrow is very specific because the uses at the start will let you get 1 more use at the end, and that final Imperial Arrow is the last thing that will occur within the 20 seconds of Raging Strikes. So after you do your opener, we go on to the overall rotation. It starts with the song cycles. That is the actual rotation. You will spend 30 seconds in Minuet, which you also always pair with Raging Strikes and Barrage. Then you will move into 30 seconds of Ballad, which you will then have chances to use Bloodletter again. And then instead of 30 seconds of Payon, we will just be doing 20 seconds. The reason we do that is because it's your lowest damage phase. You can get 4 stacks of repertoire in Payon, but once you have those 4 stacks, the beneficial effects of it have reached their limit. Pitch Perfect and Bloodletter theoretically have no upper limit, but Payon does have a set max. As for your priority order, the GCDs can basically be sorted as maintain your dots, use Apex Arrow if your gauge is full, if you have Refulgent Arrow procs, use them, and if none of these are applicable, your dots are fine, no procs, no gauge, you will then do Burst Shot, just to fill in the time. For your off globals, you maintain your songs, you use your damaging off globals, but you make sure not to clip. If you're in Minuet, you hit Raging Strikes before Raging Strikes ends, and if you don't already have a proc, you make sure to use Barrage before Raging Strikes will end, and you use Battle Voice off cooldown just to maximize how much damage it helps your party gain. Lastly, I'll go over the utility, because as mentioned, Bard's low damage output is balanced by their wide utility skills. Higher damage jobs do not have this much utility. All 3 of your songs will come with slight bonuses for your party members, and Battle Voice is a very powerful buff that strengthens your whole party in a very unique way. There are also a number of helpful off globals that are not directly offensive. You have a skill called Troubadour, which decreases incoming damage that you and your party will take. You have Nature's Minna, which is a buff that target will have increased healing. Those party members that are designed to take damage will especially appreciate this one. Warden's Payon's a little more niche, but it can remove or prevent a negative effect. Not everything can be removed or blocked, but the game will tell you when that is possible. And then last, Head Graze can interrupt. Similar to debuffs, negative effects, not everything will be interruptible, but the game will tell you explicitly. So then I just want to do a quick wrap up just to make sure all of that sunk in, because they did go pretty fast. Who can tell me what kind of job Bard is? Yeah, they do damage. Yeah, a physical DPS. Next is how many steps does your GCD priority flowchart have? Does anyone remember? If no one remembers, it's fine. The GCD flowchart actually has 5 because the dots on the diagram it is listed as 5, but I did say there are 3 fundamental ideas. So 3's still also correct, but more specifically it is 5. Can anyone tell me what the song rotation is? You don't necessarily need to include the durations, just the order. That's fine. The rotation itself is 30 seconds of minuet, 30 seconds of ballad, and 20 seconds of paean. And then last question, who can tell me what your highest damaging GCD and highest damaging off global is? Apex Arrow is the strongest GCD. That is correct. The handout should have mention of all of this as well if anyone doesn't entirely remember from the presentation. You're good. There's a lot of like terminology. The highest damaging off global is pitch perfect, so you're kind of close there since it starts with P. And with all that covered, you guys can go forth confident in your ability to play Bard. Final Fantasy XIV does have a free trial that's available up to level 60, that if anyone's really curious, you can totally check that out. Just Google Final Fantasy XIV free trial. It's really fun. I have like 33,000 hours in it. I've been playing it for 6.5 years, nonstop. And that's the end.